What's up, YouTube? Georgia Silver Hunter back, and today we're going to be doing what we haven't been able to do in the last couple of months, and that is hunt a full box of pennies. So I picked these pennies up from my local Fifth Third bank. They were able to order some for me, and I was very pleased when I got them open to see that a couple of the enders here on the top rack were in fact not new pennies, but they were actually copper pennies. So that was a 1960 something. So we should have a nice mix of coins in this box. We're going to get these pushed back and get into them. Now keep in mind, when we go through pennies, we will be pulling any copper that we find. And there is a whole myriad of copper varieties or penny varieties that we'll be looking at. Definitely paying focus on Indian head pennies and wheat pennies, as well as a lot of different things, wide AMs, close AMs, DDOs, DDRs, you name it. You could look in the description below this video for a document where I outline all of the things that I'll be looking for here today. And what would any penny hunt be without the use of a handy dandy scale and your digital microscope? And if you're in the market for one of those, I do have a link to an Amazon affiliate, or my Amazon affiliate link to the products that I use. If you're interested in buying those, I'll make a couple of bucks, or really, I think it's like 50 cents or $1 on each of these things when you make a purchase, but they are extremely helpful when hunting pennies. That said, let's just for fun show why we have this scale. Number one, I like to weigh the rolls before I do it. A typical penny weighs, I think, like 2.5 grams. When you multiply that out, a roll of all zinc pennies should weigh about 127 grams. And if you go over that, you know you've got a fair bit of copper in there. So at 133.4, I don't remember how many coppers that's going to be, but it's probably going to be between about 8 and 11 coppers. So I know, generally speaking, about how many copper pennies are going to be in there. And then, of course, if you find pennies that are tough to read the dates on, you can always just throw them on the scale. If they're 2.5 grams, they're zinc. If they're 3.1 grams, they're made of copper. So with that said, let's go ahead and just open this one real quick on camera so we can see the edges, and I will begin the hunt and bring you guys in as we find interesting things. And you can see the copper all throughout this roll. Just grab a couple here from the middle. And there's a 1970, there's a 78, there's a 76. So we know we're going to have lots of copper in these rolls. Hopefully we get lots of wheat pennies. I'll bring you in on each one of those finds. We just got through that first roll and I was way off. At 133 point, I think it was like 7 grams, we ended up with 12 copper pennies coming out of that first roll. So pretty exciting. On roll number 2, and we've got our first foreign of the box. I won't stop every time we find a foreign, but this one's old and coppery looking. It is Canadian, and it is a 1964. So we will take that and call it our first find outside of just a bunch of copper. Down here on roll number 5, and I was just spreading out these last few and saw a reverse facing wheatie. Haven't taken a look yet. Let's have a see. 1957D. First wheat penny on the box. Roll number 6, and we have our first forward facing wheatie. We've got a 1940. Same roll, just a couple of coins later, we had another wheatie, and this one is pretty beat up. Let's have a look here. That is a 1940. Looks like an S this time, 1940S. Too bad it's in such bad shape. Well, we'll add it to the 40 we already have. We're on roll 17, and we actually had an ender. I actually went through the entire roll, and we had I've been doing these by roll, a bunch of copper in there, but the last penny in the roll. Let's zoom in on this thing. My autofocus on my new phone is not great. It's a 1956 Denver. Look at that. Nice wheatie. We'll add it to the wheatie pile. On roll 23, we have our next wheat penny right here, forward facing. 1953 Denver, with a little bit of garbage on the back there, but we'll add it to the board with the rest of them. On roll 26, and we have our next wheatie. It is reversed facing, so I haven't even seen it yet. Let's see here. 1944. That's 6 Wheaties on the box, and I didn't bring you in, but we did find another Canadian. It wasn't that old, like 1980. But yeah, we've got 6 Wheaties. It's been a good hunt. We're on roll 41, and I actually I've peeled off just a couple of pennies off the roll here, and I've got one under the scope. It's a 1970S. I want to take you over to the computer because there is a small date and a large date variety of this that we've never covered, and there's something interesting on the back I want to show you, so let's get over to the computer. Okay, so what I have here is my 1970 San Francisco penny under the scope. You can see I've got some light machine doubling. I've checked the rest of the penny. I don't believe it's a DDO, and I'll just show you the In God We Trust part here. At least if there is doubling, it is very minor, and you can see this penny's in pretty bad shape. But it's been a while since I've looked into what makes a 1970 a small date or a large date. So I went ahead and I pulled up PCGS, and I found their little side-by-side comparison. And you can see on the small date, it's called a high 7. The 7 kind of sits in a straight line with the rest of the numbers. And on the large date, the 7 sits a little bit low. So if you line up the 1 and the 0, the bottom of the 7 is going to stick out, and the top of the 7 is going to be a little bit underneath the line. So what I did, just to make sure I had everything fair, was I took a screenshot of my penny, and I threw it in Photoshop and did some little lines like theirs. And you can see, now with the machine doubling, it's really close. But with the 7 where it sits low. It's almost perfectly in line here without the doubling. And it does come just underneath the line if I just line up the top of this black line with the 1 and the 0. So it does sit a little low, which leads me to believe that it is... Oops, wrong one. Which leads me to believe that it is, in fact, the large date with the low 7. Now, the other thing that this 1970 can have is the floating roof, and surprise, surprise, this one does. So you can see we have a very, very faint line here, but over here, it is completely disconnected from the building. I mean, again, we have a little bit of a line here, but it does not come all the way down. I'm going to assume that's not from age, but I believe this is the 1970 San Francisco large date with the floating roof. And looking on eBay, I want to say this is worth a couple of bucks. It's not a really valuable coin, especially in the condition I have it in. And even when you look over here on PCGS, the 1970S large date, I mean, you've got to get up into MS64 for this to even make it to like a $2 coin. The small date seems to be the more desirable of the two. But I'll pull this one aside since I'm pretty sure I've identified it as the large date. So we just cracked into roll number 42, and it was actually an ender, and it was so bad I couldn't read it, but we have our 7th wheat penny of the box, a really chewed up 1946. And roll 37 right at the end, and we have another Wheatie reverse facing this time. Let's check it out together. 1953D. So that's, what is that, number 8, I think, for the board. Roll 39, and our next Wheatie, reverse facing. It's actually in pretty good shape. 1942. Well, that does it for this box of pennies. I've got all of our finds laid out. Let me just zoom out here so you can see them all. That's everything. Let's go through them really quickly just to recap. But we did have I'll zoom in here a little bit more, a 1969D with the floating roof. We had a 1970 S large date with the floating roof. So both of those. We had 3 Canadian finds, with the oldest being this 1964. The other ones were a bit newer, I think a 1980, and I don't remember what the other one was, but I hang on to all my foreigns because I don't get them that often. Then this next row is all of our wheat pennies. So we had 8 wheat pennies, starting as early as, let's see here, 1940 S, going all the way up through 1956 Denver. Everything on this bottom row, which I'll show you in another clip here in just a second, is a book upgrade or a book fill, which is nice because I've done a lot of pennies where we've had nothing to show for it. And I pulled all of the nicer looking coppers out as I went through them. And this 1979 is going to upgrade my book, so we'll get the books out here in just a second and look at them. The last thing I want to show you is our cup of copper. Our cup of copper. There we go. Not our cup of copper. Our cup of copper. We did really, really well. We got 800. I'll throw it on the scale for you can see it, but it's about 892 grams. So you can see here we've got it set on grams, and we'll throw our cup on there. 904 grams. That includes the cup weight, which is about 11.7, 12 grams, something like that. Let's call it 903 because almost everything here on the table is copper. We, of course, didn't add that in the cup. At the 892 grams, copper is on the decline. It's down pretty big in the last several weeks. I don't have the exact numbers, but I'll throw it up on the screen so you can see it. So copper's lost a good bit of its value. You'll see the chart has dropped pretty precipitously with the price of gold and silver. But at today's spot price per, I think it's per pound of copper, it's at $3.47. We ended up with $6.49 worth of copper just in the cup. So all in all, not a bad hunt. Real quick, let's get the books out and have a look at our fills. So the first one we're going to do is the newest one. We have this 1979. It is a little bit of an upgrade to the coin that's already in there. It's pretty subtle, but it has a little bit nicer finish to it. It's got a little bit more of the shine on it, but we'll be popping that in as a replacement for that 1979. And I wanted to show you this book because it's really sad. This is the earliest years, so this goes from the 1909 VDB all the way up to the 1940S. And I have very little of this book filled. I do get quite a bit of wheat pennies. It's just they're always in the 40s and 50s. And I get lots of coppers that are in the 60s. But we did have here a really beat up 1940 San Francisco, which we'll go ahead and pop it in right here because we don't have to pop anything else out. And this one is damaged, so I hope I do get to upgrade that at some point. And we have a 1940 Philly, which is actually, I think, a slightly nicer coin than the one that's in there. And I'll put that one in after I'm done filming just because I don't want to pop anything out on camera. But that will be an upgrade. And, of course, our last book, which is we're doing really well from really 1954, 55, all the way through the last year, which is 1974, San Francisco in the book. I do have a number that could get some upgrades. I've got some really nice blingers in here, too, from past hunts. But I am going to be able to fill a couple of spots, so let's check it out. We did have a 1942. Let's see here. Where's the 42? The regular 42 is right there. We'll go ahead and pop that in. We had a 1953 Denver, which, again, I think we've got a nice upgrade, which I'll put that in just a second. And the last one is this 1956 Denver, which, again, might be a slight upgrade. I think it just has less gunk on it. I think it has a little bit better detail, so I'll be popping that in. So we did pretty good from a book perspective. I've had, like I said, a number of boxes where I haven't been able to fill much of anything in. This was nice to get a couple of new wheat pennies and, have a couple of replacement coins, at least that 1979 replacement coin. Sorry, I noticed I had one other wheat penny that I had left up on the scope that I did showcase earlier in the video, which was this 1957D, which I also think will be a little bit of an upgrade because this one has scratches throughout. And again, this one's got just a little bit nicer detail. So that's going to be an upgrade as well. So let's get to the final wrap up and go from there. And the last thing that I didn't point out during the wrap up was that I did get 4 of the formative years 2009 pennies with one decent one, but it wasn't an upgrade to the book. We did get 1 early childhood and 3 of the professional life. These are pretty collectible because it was a year they did 4 commemorative reverses on them, and it was a real limited mintage when you compare it to other years for pennies. So a lot of people do hang on to these, but I got a bunch of bank wrapped rolls of these a year ago, so I actually toss all these back because all the ones I have are basically in BU condition, and I don't need any more of these. So that wraps everything up that we found. All in all, this was a lot of fun. It was probably one of my best penny boxes in a while, and I don't get to do a lot of penny boxes because I get a lot of new 2021 and 2022 boxes. And lately, all of my banks have been short on nickels, dimes, and pennies, and a lot of banks are telling me even quarters. So Anyway, this was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm rambling here a little bit at the end. But if you made it this far, thank you so much. Drop down below this video and give me a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and you like coin roll hunts, consider clicking on that subscribe button and clicking that little bell and selecting all so you get notified each and every time I release a new video. I'd really appreciate it. And while you're down there, go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, so on and so forth. I'd really appreciate it. Well, you guys, I've got a bunch more boxes. Well, I hope I have a bunch more boxes to pick up at the bank on Thursday. So some more halves, some more pennies, and I think a quarter box. So more hunts coming this weekend. You guys take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.